how far we've come. This week, President Trump issued his own list of pardons and commutations, including one to a man whose family started making huge political donations to President Trump's re-election campaign and to the RNC in recent months. Once they started seeking a pardon for one of their family members. They'd never given before, but the family dumped hundreds of thousands of dollars on the president's re-election campaign and the RNC. And when you know it, bingo, a guy gets his pardon. President Trump also attended the richest fundraiser of his entire re-election effort this past weekend. He raised $10 million in one night, the most expensive fundraiser of his re-election campaign. A typical high-dollar fundraiser is like $50,000 a couple. This was over $500,000 a couple. The fundraiser was held at the home of a billionaire named Nelson Peltz. How did Nelson Peltz become a billionaire? Well, he made a lot of his money thanks to a convicted felon named Michael Milken, a financier who was indicted for racketeering and securities fraud in 1989, banned from trading for life, and ultimately sentenced to 10 years in prison. So the fundraiser was held by this billionaire. The fundraiser was hosted by this billionaire who made all his money with Michael Milken. That was Saturday night. On Tuesday, President Trump announced that he was pardoning Michael Milken. And he explicitly said in the pardon announcement that the reason he was doing so is because this guy who just hosted the most expensive fundraiser for his re-election campaign had asked him to please pardon Michael Milken. Because again, Michael Milken's how he made all his money. And he just set up Donald Trump with millions of dollars for his re-election campaign. Literally 3 nights before the pardon. And I know that a lot of stuff has happened this week. And there were other people on the list of pardons and commutations who deserve their own after-school special in terms of their wild corruption, the wild corruption of their crimes and the wild corruption of their being pardoned by this president in the way he did it. But just think about that moment in 2008 that Peter Baker documented in his book. Just think about how far we have slid down the slippery slope of the mountain in just a handful of years, right? From the desperate Christmas Eve, all hands on deck, freak out, take it back, panic moment in the George W. Bush administration where they doorstopped the pardon attorney and took the thing off the guy's desk because they were so worried they might look like they were doing a pardon in exchange for a donation. To now, the full-blown advertisement that, yeah, we're giving you the pardon because of the money you gave us, because you're a donor. Or because your friends are donors, and they asked after they gave us the money. I mean, it's not like something they're trying to hide. This is what they're advertising they're doing. One of the prosecutors in the Michael Milken case actually wrote an op-ed about the Milken pardon this week in which he described the listing of the campaign donors as the sponsors of specific pardons as, quote, as guileless an admission I have ever seen of rich man's justice. And so I feel like, where we got this week between the New Hampshire primary and the Nevada caucuses tomorrow, as the, intelligence community lets us know that Russia's trying to elect him again, and the president fired the head of the intelligence community for saying so, as the president told the Justice Department overtly they needed to let his friend off the hook, despite his 7 felony convictions, and the attorney general tried to make it so. I mean, as all of this stuff just poured down on us this week, I feel like, at the very least, I think it calls for a lot from us as citizens. But if it calls for one little thing, it calls for us as a country, it calls for us as citizens to grow up and get real in one very specific way, which is that we need to stop talking about threats to the rule of law, or the appearance of impropriety, or concerns about the compromise of our democratic foundations, or suspicions that our small d democratic constitutional protections might be undermined, or our foundations might potentially be eroding. I mean, we need to stop pretending like this is Christmas 2008 and there are concerns about whether anybody knew about the real estate fraud guy's dad making the donation. This is not that time anymore. This is not that country anymore. This is not the same government. This is not even the same bad government, right? This is not the fear of the appearance of potential impropriety. What we have now is the advertisement, the broadcast, the insistence of impropriety without consequence. Do you want a presidential pardon? You need connections to me for that. You need to make donations to me or otherwise be recognized as a Trump supporter or somebody who's connected to people who matter to me. That's how you get a pardon. There's no other process other than that. This is not a behind-the-scenes dynamic that they're ashamed of and trying to cover up. This is out loud, on purpose, so as to attract more donations and more ostentatious displays of loyalty. It's designed to make everybody think twice about displaying any visible opposition to this president as well. I mean, people who are against him get the law. People who are his friends or can help him out, Merry Christmas. And that is the thread that is tying this all together, right? This out loud, unabashed, braying broadcast of it all. And it's being enforced at all levels of the government, on all levers of power within the government. In the Justice Department, if you are a Trump ally or you were involved in his campaign or you have helped cover up bad behavior by the president that may have helped get him into office, the president will loudly insist that your prosecution is a witch hunt and that he will protect you. If you're a member of a jury, a private citizen who gets called to jury duty, and your jury votes to convict somebody who the president has decided to protect, well, you as a private citizen, you as somebody who will sit on a jury, you'll end up villain of the week on Fox News and denounced by the president repeatedly at rallies and online. Think about that when you go into your jury deliberations. If you're a judge overseeing a case that touches on the president's interests or implications of the president's own criminal or otherwise bad behavior, well, judge, you're about to get famous, too. You're about to get attacked by the president. You'll be attacked on Fox News. You will be threatened to do what the president wants. Think about that when you're deciding on your rulings, judge. If you're in law enforcement, if you're in the FBI or in the Justice Department, and you end up somehow connected to an investigation of this president or his campaign, or you've otherwise been witness to something he has done wrong, well, the weight of the Justice Department will be brought to bear on you. The president will insist on criminal charges against you. Andrew McCabe, former FBI director. You, James Comey, former FBI director. Lisa Page, Peter Strzok, Bruce Orr, and any other official who had anything to do with an investigation into the president's bad behavior. Never mind, you're in law enforcement. You're in the Justice Department. You will find your careers destroyed. Maybe you'll end up being defendants, too, because he can make Bill Barr do that. Watch. He'll say it publicly, and then Bill Barr will do it. I mean, Bill Barr doesn't like the president talking about that out loud, but the president likes talking about that out loud because the threat, the promise is the point. And it applies everywhere. If you're in the military, same deal. Lieutenant Colonel Alexander Vindman, not the whistleblower, not somebody who went to the press. He's active duty military, decorated wounded combat veteran. He reported up the chain of command exactly as he was told to do when he saw something that he believed needed to be reported up the chain of command. He testified truthfully in response to a lawful subpoena once and only once and has never otherwise spoken. He is frog marched out of the White House, along with his brother, too, for good measure, who had nothing to do with it. The Undersecretary of Defense for Policy, John Rood, fired this week. This is a very senior Pentagon official. His crime was that he was the official who certified that Ukraine had met all its anti-corruption benchmarks, and they should get their military aid. Well, that doesn't match the White House line. That doesn't match the defense of the president. So Undersecretary of Defense John Rood, you're fired too. Even in the National Security Council, this week, the Deputy National Security Advisor was fired. There's so much else going on, it barely made a ripple. But this is a big deal job. You know, Ben Rhodes from the Obama administration, that's the job he had, Deputy National Security Advisor. Well, the Trump Deputy National Security Advisor was fired this week because she was falsely accused of being the person who wrote that anonymous op-ed that criticized President Trump more than a year ago. And by all accounts, it really seems to have not been her. She's not anonymous. And White House officials who won't put their name to the quote are telling reporters that the White House has not actually, doesn't actually subscribe to the rumors that it's her. But nevertheless, the suspicion that it might be her, that was enough this week to get her fired as Deputy National Security Advisor. She now works in the Energy Department as an advisor instead. How nice. But think about that message. They don't believe it was her. But the suspicion is enough. It's not enough that you can't ever criticize the president or, notice that he's done something wrong in the course of your duties. You can't even fall under suspicion of seeming like the kind of person who might criticize the president. That's enough to get you fired, even if you didn't actually criticize him. Also, do you have a sister or a brother? If so, they'll be fired too, presumably. Look at them. They kind of look like you. And now, of course, it's the intelligence community as well. The president is not mad, apparently, at the intelligence community's assessment that Russia is intervening in this next election, again, to try to reelect him. At least he's not mad at Russia about it. He's mad at the intelligence community about it. He's mad at the intelligence community for warning other elements of the government about the fact that it is happening. The director of national intelligence really was just fired this week because somebody in his office had the temerity to tell Congress what Russia is doing this time to get him elected again. The principal deputy to the director of national intelligence, a 30-year CIA veteran, also ousted. I don't know if you've ever met anybody or if you know anybody who works in U.S. intelligence in any capacity, but think about what their jobs are like today. The president has just broadcast out loud, not hinting, no implication here, no worries here. There's no qualms, right? There's no hiding it. The president has now broadcast here. If you work in the U.S. intelligence community and you, in the course of your job protecting this country, discover an attack on our country, an attack on our democracy by a foreign adversary, you will be fired if you say that is what you have found. The director of national intelligence was just fired because U.S. intelligence agencies have found that and because someone in his office warned Congress. And again, I think this turn of events just in the last week or so in our country calls on us as citizens to do any number of things. You tell me, right? These are very dark turns that this country has taken very quickly. But if nothing else, literally the least we can do at this point is to stop talking about concerns, worries, a potential chilling effect, the appearance of impropriety, the appearance of a conflict of interest, the appearance of improper political influence, concerns, distress, worries, right? I mean, this is not a warning. The dark days are not coming. The dark days are here. And so those of us who have imagined times like this for our country, who might have thought that the heroic thing for us to do as citizens, if our country ever took these turns, would be to sound the alarm, to articulate what's wrong with the direction our country is taking and to warn people about where it's heading. For those of us who thought that would be the kind of heroism that was called for, we were wrong. Because at least now, that's no longer the form of heroism that we need. That time is past. These guys are not sneaking around trying to get away with stuff. And the heroism is down to, catching them and telling people what they're doing. They are proclaiming openly that the rules are gone, they will do what they want, the government will be turned against you if you stand against this president. That is not a warning. That is where we are. And so, what do? Hold that thought.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.